Friends, before we begin, do me a favor. If you like stories about real machines, about people and their genius, about how legends were born in fire, click subscribe and the bell. This is important to me. And at the end of the video, there will be the most interesting part, my personal, perhaps controversial, conclusion, and I'm waiting for your comments. Let's argue, discuss, and get to the bottom of it together. Let's go. Can you imagine the year 1943? Not just a date in a textbook, it's the very height, the very meat grinder of the Second World War. The earth is already plowed up by explosions, cities are in ruins, and the sky has become a field for the most high-tech and deadly duel of that time. There, the fates of offensives, the fates of entire armies, were decided. And by 43, everyone understood everything. At first, everyone chased speed. The faster, the better. But war is a great teacher, harsh and merciless. It quickly put everything in its place. It turned out that speed alone was not enough. Imagine, you're in a jet supercar, but the road is a winding mountain pass with sharp turns. Your supercar is helpless against a nimble, agile little car that takes that very turn on the edge. The same was true in the sky. Dogfights increasingly turned into turning battles. At close range, when you can see the enemy's face, when every second counts, and your life depends on how obedient your machine is, how well it can outlast the other in this furious dance. The airplane became an extension of the pilot's body. And in 1943, a constellation of machines took center stage, for which maneuverability, that very agile character, became not just a characteristic, but the main weapon, a philosophy, a reason for existence. Today, we won't just list 5 fighters. We'll immerse ourselves in the era, understand why these particular machines, at what cost was their maneuverability achieved, and what is more important in real combat, perfect specifications on paper, or that very elusive soul of the airplane, felt only by the pilot. This is a story about legends of the turn. Through some tea, it's going to be long and very interesting. 5th place, the German Fist, Focke-Wulf FW190A5. To understand the Focke-Wulf's place in this story, you need to look at the German war machine in 43. Germany is no longer advancing as confidently as in 41. It is defending. It needs not just breakthrough technologies, but reliable, mass-produced, universal soldiers. And by this time, the FW190 is no longer a novice, but a battle-hardened veteran. The A5 version is an evolution, an elongated engine compartment, a reinforced structure, an attempt to cram even more power into an already excellent platform, and adapt it to all fronts at once, both to the Eastern Front, where the battlefield is at treetop level, and to the Western Front, where you have to climb higher and higher to meet the flying fortresses. The beast's heart is a 14-cylinder, turbo-radial engine, the BMW 801D2. Imagine 1,700 horsepower enclosed in metal. It propelled this aircraft to 650 kilometers per hour at ground level. And the armament, oh, it was a true flying battery for MG151 cannons, 20mm caliber, and to heavy machine guns. One burst and an enemy plane was often left as just splinters. On paper, the perfect fighter, powerful, fast, deadly. But what does this have to do with maneuverability, you ask? After all, it's known that in a classic, horizontal turn, in the circle, the same Soviet Yak or Spitfire could outturn it. This is where the most interesting part begins. German tacticians and ace pilots were not stupid. They didn't try to break the machine, trying to turn a heavy fist into an elegant fencer. They changed the rules of the game. Their trump card became the vertical. Imagine the tactic, a rapid climb, where the powerful engine gave an advantage. Then a sharp roll over the wing, an almost vertical dive, speed building up like an avalanche. And then a strike from above, a short, furious burst, and again a climb away or to the side. This was a battle on energy, on potential and kinetic energy. The FW190 was unmatched in this. It was stable at high speeds. Its ailerons, those surfaces on the wings for roll, responded to the slightest stick movement. It didn't wiggle, it chopped, sharply, precisely, powerfully. Luftwaffe pilots valued it for this predictability and stability. In the cockpit of the Focke-Wulf, you didn't have to fight the machine. You could think about tactics. It allowed you to hold your own even against 2 or 3 opponents. Using this seesaw tactic, up-down, strike, bounce back. This was maneuverability of a different, order not angular speed, in a turn. but a phenomenal ability to instantly change the plane of the battle, to energetically throw the airplane from one position to another. It was the terror of low and medium altitudes, where the fate of infantry and tanks on the ground was decided. And for this combination of power, speed, and flexible, intelligent maneuverability, it rightfully takes 5th place in our turning fighter hit parade. 4th place, Stalin's Falcon, Lavokin Lafayette Waffen. Now let's move to the other end of the earth, to the Eastern Front. Here, war is mud, frost, dust in summer, and an incredible strain of all the nation's strength. The Soviet aviation industry, evacuated beyond the Urals, had only just reached an unprecedented production rate. But in 1942, it became clear our main fighters, the Sanyaks and early Lags, were losing to the new German Focke-Wulfs in speed and power. An answer was needed, and it came from Semyon Lavokin. The La-5 FN, which appeared in the spring of '43, is not just a modification, it's a revolution in wood and metal. The secret is in the engine. The ASH-82 FN, the same radial as the German one, but our own, domestic, and it delivered an incredible 1,850 horsepower. How? Thanks to a direct fuel injection system. The letter N stands for direct injection. This gave a power boost, especially at low altitudes, and eliminated the main defect of the old engine fuel supply interruptions during negative G-forces. When the pilot dove down, now you could safely dive after the enemy. And here we come to the main point. The La-5 FN was not just fast up to 648 kilometers per hour. It was incredibly tough. A radial air-cooled engine. These are not the thin, vulnerable radiator tubes of a Messerschmitt. It could take several bullets and, smoking, keep running. This saved lives. But what is even more important for our topic, this aircraft was incredibly planted in a turn. Pilots, switching from other machines, noted, the La-5 FN held speed in a turn, didn't stall into a spin abruptly, allowed aimed far even at maximum G-forces. It outturned. This is the magic of aerodynamics and balance. At low altitudes, where the main battles on the Eastern Front took place, ground support, attack runs, bomber interceptions, it became a real nightmare for German aces. It could force a close-quarters battle, glue itself to the opponent, and with its stability and engine thrust, literally twist him out of the fight. And here we must mention the genius of simplicity. The fuselage wooden, made of Delft wood. The wing also wood with fabric covering. This wasn't just due to poverty, although that too, but to strategic wisdom. Metalworking machines were worth their weight in gold, but there were many carpenters and woodworkers. The aircraft could be produced in incredible numbers. It could be repaired in field conditions by a technician of average skill. The La-5 FN is the embodiment of the national character of the war. Hardy, tough, simple, but capable of incredible strength and maneuverability at the decisive moment. It restored our pilots' confidence, and for this spirit, for this phenomenal maneuverability on the edge of the possible, it is in 4th place. 3rd place, the aristocrat of the sky, Supermarine Spitfire Mk.X. Now to the west, Britain, which has already been standing alone against the full might of the Luftwaffe for 3 years. The symbol of its steadfastness was the elegant, aristocratic Spitfire. But by '43, it too faced a crisis. The appearance of the WWII over the English Channel was a cold shower. The German fighter outperformed the main Spitfire variants at many altitudes. An urgent answer was needed. It was the Spitfire Mk.X. This was, in essence, a rescue operation. They placed a new, much more powerful engine, the Rolls-Royce Merlin 61, onto the airframe of the proven Spitfire. Its genius was in the two-stage, two-speed supercharger. In simple terms, this engine didn't choke at high altitude. It delivered its 1,565 horsepower up there, where others were already gasping. Maximum speed exceeded 655 kilometers per hour. But the British preserved the main thing, the soul of the aircraft. That very elegance of control, that very harmony for which pilots adored it. The Spitfire's wing is a work of art. Its elliptical shape wasn't for beauty, but for minimal drag and ideal load distribution. In a turn, the Spitfire was like a rapier, precise, fast, deadly. It didn't screw itself into a turn with brute force, like some, but flowed into it, lightly and predictably. The pilot felt every movement of the air, every hint of a stall. The machine talked to him. This allowed fighting on the edge, squeezing everything out of the aerodynamics. In a horizontal turn at medium altitudes, few could compare with it. It could dance with the Bf 109G for hours, forcing it into ever sharper movements, and finally catch it in the sights. The Spitfire Mk9 is the benchmark of balance. It wasn't the best at any one thing, but it was brilliant at everything: speed, climb rate, maneuverability, armament. It forgave mistakes by novices, which was critically important for mass air forces, and opened up an abyss of possibilities for aces. It fought on equal terms with the Messerschmitt in turns, and with the Focke-Wulf in an energy fight. This harmony, this feeling that the machine is an extension of your will, makes it one of the greatest fighters, and in our context an undisputed champion of elegant, intellectual maneuverability. A well-deserved third place. Second place, the Eternal Soldier, Messerschmitt Bf 109G6 Gustav. It would seem that by 43, the design of the Messerschmitt, born back in the mid-30s, should have become obsolete. But no, the Bf 109, like an old, reliable rifle, continued to be the backbone of Luftwaffe fighter aviation. The G6 version, the Gustav, became the most mass-produced. It was recognized by its characteristic Warts fairings on the fuselage. For the heavy 13mm and G131 machine guns, it became heavier, more difficult to handle on takeoff and landing. The narrow bicycle landing gear remained a nightmare for beginners. But in the air, it was still the same dangerous, swift predator. Its Daimler-Benz DB605A engine 1,475 horsepower and light airframe gave it a phenomenal rate of climb. It shot upwards like a candle. And here is the key to its maneuverability. The Messer was never the king of a long, drawn-out horizontal turn. Its element was vertical maneuver coupled with fast, whip-like turns. An ace pilot worked with energy, gained altitude, made a half-loop at the top, almost at zero speed, kicked the rudder and was already falling on the enemy from above. This required incredible skill and nerves of steel, but in skilled hands, the Gustav was a deadly close-quarters weapon. It had heavy controls, not as light and graceful as the Spitfires, but very responsive. It required the pilot to become one with the machine, to feel its shudder, to anticipate the stall. And those who achieved this symbiosis worked wonders. It could fight on par with much newer aircraft precisely because of this old, proven aerodynamics and vertical dynamism. It was a soldier who had been through all the campaigns, knew all the tricks. Its maneuverability wasn't for textbooks, but for real, brutal, fleeting combat survival. For this combat toughness and toothy tactics, a solid second place. First place, the Spirit of the Samurai, Mitsubishi A6M50. And now we come to the pinnacle, to the airplane legend, the airplane myth, the Mitsubishi A6M50. By 43, it was no longer the invulnerable god of the sky. It seemed to be in 41 at Pearl Harbor. The Americans studied captured examples, found weaknesses: no armor plate behind the pilot, no self-sealing fuel tanks, an overly light structure. New tactics emerged: hit and run, a ban on turning battles with the Zero. It seemed its time had passed. But in our rating of maneuverability, it was and remains the unsurpassed king, the absolute. Its maneuverability is not a tactical quality, but the very essence, a fighter that seemed capable of the impossible. Imagine a very light airframe, powerful, large combat flats that could be deployed in flight, perfectly tuned aerodynamics. All this gave it such an angular turn rate that it took the breath away of those watching. It turned almost on the spot. Any other fighter from our list getting into a horizontal dogfight on turns with it was doomed. The Spitfire, the Messer, the Lavokin, they were all heavier. They had a different philosophy. The Zero was the pure embodiment of the idea of close-quarters maneuverable combat. A Zero pilot didn't think about energy, about the vertical. He started the carousel and kept the enemy in it until he made a mistake or ran out of fuel. It was a fight according to the canons of fencing, or a samurai duel, one perfect strike. Its Nakajima Sake 21 engine 1,130 horsepower was weaker than its competitors, its speed 565 km per hour lower. But in its element, it had no equal. Yes, it was vulnerable. One successful burst from a heavy machine gun could tear it apart in the air. But until that moment, it dictated its own rules. The A6M5 version received a strengthened wing and slightly better dive speed, but the spirit remained the same. The Zero is a monument to what happens when designers prioritize one single, hypertrophied characteristic. It is the genius of a single technique. And in 1943, in a pure turning fight, it had no equal. Therefore, it is number one, the absolute and undisputed king of the turn. So what is more important? So we've traveled this path from German factories to Japanese islands. 5 machines, 5 philosophies. The Universal Soldier FW-190, the Fierce Folklore 5FN, the Balanced Aristocrat Spitfire, the Eternal Toothy Soldier BF-109, and the Absolute Specialist the Zero. So what is more important in real combat, the perfect maneuverability of the Zero or the balance of the Spitfire? The answer suggested by the history of 1943 is paradoxical. The winner was not the one with the best airplane. The winner was the one with the best system. Industry that could produce thousands of reliable machines, like the USSR and the USA. Tactics that skillfully used the strengths of their own equipment and hit the weak points of the enemies, like the Germans and the British at the start of the war. And training, a constant influx of new pilots. Maneuverability, in 1943, became the last ace in the hole, the last argument in a close-quarters fight, when everything else no longer worked. It was the art of survival in its purest form. Each of these machines gave its pilot this chance, a chance to twist away, to outturn, to evade at the last moment. And for this chance, the pilots loved their machines like combat comrades. And now the promised intriguing conclusion I started with. I believe that if in 1943 you ranged a one-on-one duel, on equal terms, purely on maneuverability, then the Zero would beat them all. But war is not a duel, it is a cruel, merciless system. And in this system, the survivors were not the most maneuverable, but the most. But which ones, in your opinion? Let's argue about this in the comments. Right, which aircraft, in your view, was the MAN fighter of 1943? And why? And what tactic was correct? Betting on generalists, like the FW-190, or on specialists, like the Zero. And of course, if this deep dive touched a nerve, if you want more such immersions into the history of technology, support the channel, subscribe, like, write comments. It's the best motivation to dig further and deeper.